Imagine that one day your parents were kidnapped, so you end up becoming a god just to get them back. In the year 9616, Baron Dungbo and his wife were captured by his enemies, thereby leaving his 2 children to fend for themselves. After 8 years, the elder brother, Ling, went to the mountain range of Desolation on a quest to have his younger brother accepted as the Grand Mage's disciple. In that quest, he must obtain the heart of a Silver Moon Wolf King. Meanwhile, the younger brother Quinn is hiding on top of a tower. The guards almost find him, but he rings a bell using his spiritual powers, causing the guards to leave the scene. But he soon loses his balance, and he is about to fall to his death. Thankfully, his uncle Tom grabs his arm in the nick of time. Tom pulls him up and then begins to reprimand him. Quinn says that he just wanted to see his brother. Tom explains his brother is on a mission and tells him not to worry because Ling is very strong. The scene then switches to Ling, and he is now in the mountain range of Desolation. There he encounters his uncle Zong. Together, they journey deeper into the mountain range. While on their venture, they get surrounded by some jackals. Zong prepares to fight, summoning his additional arms, but Ling charges forward, summoning his spear from his ring, and fights off the jackals. While he is fighting the jackals, we see a raven flying in the air. It turns out that the raven is recording the scene for the Longshan Tower officials. They are impressed by his fighting prowess, but they wonder why such a small event is being recorded when their duty is to survey the world. The Grand Lord, Xian, then appears. One of them explains the event to the Grand Lord. As the group starts mocking Ling, they think it's pointless to watch him since 90% of the people who enter the mountain range end up dead, but the Grand Lord insists that they follow his instructions and keep an eye on him. Eventually, Ling was able to defeat the jackals all on his own. They proceed with their journey, and Zong compliments Ling for his strength. He admits that the young warrior has surpassed him. Ling then asks his uncle if he'll be able to protect his brother and save his parents, but Zong says that he's still too young and they will continue to watch over him. As they proceed further, they stop as they encounter a group of white wolves with the Wolf King, and suddenly, they see a dark figure moving behind them. In a flashback, we see Ling in a store. He sits before a spear and touches it. The spear responds to his touch by glowing brightly. However, he shakes his head and tells the servants to take it away. Ling states that he may never find a good weapon in that city. On their way out, the servants encounter the shop owner. The owner orders his servants to bring a certain spear to him. He personally presents it before Ling, while stating that it is the true treasure of his shop. Ling takes a good look at the spear, and he seems impressed. He tests it, and he easily shatters a wooden column. The owner recognizes Ling's technique. Ling reveals that his spear technique has 3 realms, but he still hasn't broken into the first realm, which is called drifting snow. The owner says that, with the spear he's selling, it would only be a matter of time before he breaks through. At that moment, Ling sees the servants carrying a spear that looks generic. He uses his powers, and it starts shaking. This shocks the owner and his servants, because they all think that the spear is trash. However, Ling really wants the spear. He calls to it, and it flies straight into his hand. This spear is now known as the Flying Snow Spear. Back in the present, the dark figure reveals itself and lunges at Zong. Ling alerts his uncle to its presence, allowing Zong to dodge the beast's attack just in time. Zong faces the creatures and summons his magical arms to attack, while Ling throws his spear at it. However, the nimble creature is able to dodge their attacks. The leopard disappears, and they watch each other's back. They talk about the shadow leopard, and suggest that it is an even greater threat than the Wolf King. Zong states that they need to get through the night. The leopard lunges at Ling, and he counters with a majestic thrust. However, it vanishes and it pounces at him from behind, but Ling was able to repel its attack. Ling tries to finish it off, but it manages to catch the tip of his spear and launch a counterattack. This causes Ling to kneel before the creature and cough up blood. Zong approaches Ling and checks on him. Ling tells his uncle that he will lure the leopard away while Zong escapes. His uncle does not agree with the plan, but Ling tells him not to argue as he dashes toward the creature. Zong chases after Ling, but eventually he loses sight of his nephew. Meanwhile, we see Ling running alone. The leopard leaps at him from above, and he thrusts his spear toward it, and the tip of his spear clashes with its claws. He battles with the beast, and the creature's agility puts Ling at a disadvantage. Ling fights well, but he is still no match for the leopard. He is pushed around since he can't keep up with its speed. Ling eventually falls to the ground. Refusing to give up, Ling tries to reach out for his weapon, but the creature steps on his back. He thinks this is the end and starts crying. Suddenly, he remembers his parents and he gets a second wind. Ling calls out to his spear and it starts flying around and attacking the creature. The leopard gets pushed back and this gives Ling time to get back up. He grabs onto his weapon and launches a projectile at the beast, which it barely dodges. Ling starts moving super fast and he gains the advantage over the creature. He is able to land a few blows and he realizes that he has finally broken into the first realm of his spear technique. Being at a disadvantage, the leopard runs away. The scene then switches to Zong, who is looking for his nephew. He comes across the shadow leopard and starts to think that maybe Ling has perished. Just when they are about to clash, Ling suddenly pierces through the leopard from behind. Zong is astonished, but right after defeating the leopard, Ling passes out. Elsewhere, we meet the Grand Mage, Baiji. He uses alchemy to upgrade a crossbow. His disciple, Jia, approaches him and mentions that Ling went to the mountain range of desolation. The Grand Mage remarks that he had wanted Ling to back out by giving him a difficult task. Baiji wonders where Jia got her information, but he decides not to probe into it, just telling her not to associate herself with shady individuals. Back on the mountain range, Zong sets up camp while Ling recovers from the battle. As Zong was cooking the shadow leopard's meat, Ling wakes up. Zong gives Ling the meat, and he tells him not to be so impulsive next time, but Ling just brags about breaking through the first realm of his spear technique, so he can now use drifting snow. This surprises his uncle, because Ling's father was never able to use it. He is impressed that his nephew can make such great progress in just a few years. Ling remarks that he was only able to do it because of the flying snow spear. They see a raven on the spear, and it turns out to be the same raven that the Longshan Tower officials are using to observe Ling. The scene switches to them once again. They think that the spear is an alchemical weapon. Grand Lord Xian states that Ling's spear technique is a remnant of a transcendence life, and one can attain a breakthrough by simply relying on an alchemical weapon, saying Ling must be a genius. Meanwhile, Zong tells his nephew about how the Silver Moon Wolves function as a pack. Since there are only 2 of them, they would be greatly outnumbered, but Ling comes up with a plan. In that plan, he will go straight for the Wolf King, thereby causing the pack to collapse. They attack the wolf pack together and slay the wolves that are blocking the way, but the Wolf King keeps summoning more white wolves to defend him. Upon seeing an opening, Ling charges toward the Wolf King. It breathes fire to defend itself, but it's not enough to stop Ling. The Wolf King lunges at him and pushes him back. Ling uses his acrobatic skills to evade the attacks, but it still manages to hit him. It then breathes fire once again, but Ling evades it by running around the monster. After that, Ling uses drifting snow, allowing him to overwhelm the monster with blinding speed. He lands a number of attacks on the Wolf King, and it drops dead after a few seconds. Meanwhile, Zong struggles against the wolf pack. Ling arrives just in time, and the wolf pack is no match for him, but he decides to withdraw because he didn't want to slaughter the wolves who were just trying to defend themselves. He is reminded of his own mother, who did everything to protect him, and he wonders why his parents were captured. Ling reminds his uncle that after he receives Longshan Tower's Black Iron title, Zong must tell him the reason why his parents got captured. Zong agrees, and Ling ponders about what will happen after he receives the title. Just then, we see 2 bandits spying on them. Meanwhile, in a secret hideout, we meet Jack, the leader of the bandits. 2 cooks stand before him. He throws them a knife and tells them that the survivor gets to serve him. They start fighting each other, and this amuses him. During the fight, the 2 bandits arrive, and they inform Jack about a big score. Jack brings his group to Ling's location. He jumps right in front of Ling and his uncle. He tells them to give him their valuables if they don't want to die, and Jack's group proceeds to surround them. Zong recognizes Jack, and he is about to challenge him, but Ling stops him knowing that he's injured, so Ling prepares to fight. Jack says that Zong must be scared, since he's letting a kid fight for him. They try to intimidate Ling, and he responds by throwing a knife that almost hits Jack's head. Jack orders his archers to fire, and we then see a flashback from 10 years ago. In a burning village, Zong was getting pushed around by Jack. They engaged in combat, but Jack was clearly the better fighter. Just as Jack was about to finish him off, Zong was saved by some bowmen. One of the bowmen tells him that the civilians have been evacuated, and Zong reveals that he was just buying time for the civilians to escape. Enraged, Jack stabs one of the bowmen. He was about to slay the other two, but he hears a lion's roar. Tong arrives with reinforcements, and Zong leaves the scene. Tong orders his archers to shower Jack with arrows. Jack is able to evade most of them, but one of the arrows grazes him. Seeing that he is at a disadvantage, Jack escapes and promises to return. Since then, Jack and Zong became bitter rivals, and their groups clashed often. Back to the present, Ling goes after Jack's mage. The archers fire at him, but they all miss. Ling closes in on the mage, thrusting his spear, but the mage uses a magical shield to block it. But the shield isn't able to withstand the force of Ling's attack. It breaks and the spear pierces through his chest. Jack catches up to him. Ling tells him that he's next, and he charges at him with a series of thrusts. Jack desperately tries to defend himself, but he's barely able to keep up with Ling's speed. In the end, the flying snow spear pierces Jack's heart and ends his life. Seeing that their leader has fallen, the other bandits run away in fear. Meanwhile, in the Longshan Tower, the officials were surprised to see the result of the battle. Xian appears and asks them if they are now convinced that Ling is special. He then opens the window of the tower, releasing more ravens as he states that Ling is about to make a mark in the world. Meanwhile, we meet Kong Hai and Kong Yu after they had a meeting with Bai Ji. Jia passes through and delivers a letter to her master that reports about Ling. Kong Hai overhears this, and it grabs his attention. While outside, Kong Yu tells her father she was not accepted as the Grand Mage's disciple, but her father tells her not to give up hope. Kong Hai asks his daughter if she remembers Ling, and they decide to make their way to the Snow Eagle territory to visit him. Meanwhile, Ling and Zong find the secret hideout of Jack's group. Jack's lackeys start begging for their lives. The bandits offer them their loot. However, Ling tells them to repent and mend their ways. Suddenly, time stops for Ling, and he begins to panic. Big red eyes start appearing on the ground, and he pulls out his weapon. After that, time resumes for him. Ling immediately tells his uncle that they need to leave. Zong asks him what's wrong, but he just grabs his stuff and starts running. His uncle follows suit, and as they leave the hideout, the bandits start to wonder what's happening. An enormous face emerges from the mountain. It states that the boy has sensed its presence, and that it needs to move to a new location. Later, Zong asks about the presence that Ling detected. Ling says he has never encountered anything like it before. Zong thinks that it could be a roaming transcendent, but he wonders why it didn't harm the bandits. Ling believes that the transcendent probably didn't care about lowlives like Jack. He adds that the power was so strong that he felt like an insect, but they try not to worry about it and make their way back home. Back at the castle, Quinn asks Tong why his brother hasn't returned yet. Tong replies that he will probably return after 2 days and assures Quinn that he's going to be fine. A soldier informs them that Kong Hai has arrived at the castle. Tong meets up with Kong Hai, but he isn't happy to see him. Tong reminds him that when the Snow Eagle territory was attacked, he did nothing but hide, and they had not heard from him since. Kong Hai claims that his hands were tied, but Tong thinks it's just a flimsy excuse. Zong and Ling suddenly arrive at the castle. He greets them, and he notices the shadow leopard pelt. Tong is astonished. Kong Hai greets Ling and tells him that his heroic exploits are now known throughout the country because of the Longshan Tower. Ling asks him about the purpose of his visit, but Kong Hai says that he just wanted to catch up. Ling asks them about his brother, and Kong Hai says that Quinn is taking a stroll with his daughter. Later, while walking around the castle, Tong asks Ling why he let Kong Hai stay. Ling says it's not worth holding a grudge, and thinks that Kong Hai must have an agenda, but he will not be so easily manipulated. Later, they see Quinn with Kong Yu. Quinn is happy to see his brother, and he rushes over to hug him. Kong Yu approaches Ling, and they greet each other. A servant approaches Tong, and informs him that Bai Ji has arrived at the castle. Ling thinks that Longshan Tower has spread the news throughout the country, and Zong worries that it could attract trouble. Meanwhile, the Grand Mage is teaching his student Jia to control the flames on the stove. But she fails, and the fire starts moving erratically. Quinn freezes it just in time, and Bai Ji approaches him. He compliments the boy for having outstanding talent and a good heart, saying that he expects great things from him. Later, they present the heart of a wolf king to Bai Ji, but the Grand Mage states that he has another request. Quinn gets upset because his brother has already completed the quest, but Ling tells him not to be so rude. Ling asks Baiji about his next request. Baiji says that he wants to rent some land in the Snow Eagle territory because the place is hidden. Ling grants his request, and the Grand Mage uses his magic to instantly transfer his tower to the land he was given. Quinn catches up to them, and he is being followed by Kongyu. The Grand Mage asks Ling about Kong Hai's ties to the Snow Eagle territory, and he tells Baiji that Kong Hai was his father's old friend. He suddenly spaces out, as he remembers the favor Kong Hai asked of him the previous night. The Grand Mage calls out to him, and he says that he has a favor to ask. Kongyu reveals her father's plan was to use his connections, so that she can also be accepted as the Grand Mage's disciple. Quinn then enters the tower, and he gets to witness some magic from Jia. She lights up the gems floating in the air, but she fails to control them after some time. Her seniors laugh at her as she wonders why she failed. The Grand Mage then enters, and he explains to his disciples that mages use spiritual energy to create models of all living things. He adds that a common misconception about spiritual energy is that it comes from within the mage's body. A mage just absorbs, solidifies, and then releases the energy. Those with spiritual talent can simply connect with the natural world. So the most important thing for a mage is to become one with nature. He explains that Jia failed because she had a deep attachment during the conjuring. The Grand Mage tells Jia not to be impatient with the results as she is still young. However, she seems to have some sinister thoughts. After that, the Grand Mage speaks to Ling in private. Quinn approaches Jia and calls her his senior, but since they're about the same age, Jia doesn't want him to call her his senior. She then grabs his arm, and they start running around the castle. Kongyu chases after him, but she can't keep up with them. Later, she sees Ling's room. She enters, and tells Ling that the banquet celebrating his brother's apprenticeship is about to start. Ling decides to head to the banquet, but Kongyu stops him. She takes him to her room and gives him a makeover. As she was fixing him up, she talks about how she was accepted as a disciple. He says that he decided to help her because she has talent, and he doesn't want to see it go to waste. Furthermore, when she's with his little brother, he feels at ease. After a while, they leave Kongyu's room. Suddenly, a servant runs towards him and reports that someone charged into the main hall wanting to see him. The servant mentions that he has an extraordinary aura, and he looks like he's up to no good. Ling rushes to the hall. He arrives at the scene and asks his uncle Zong about the intruder. He sees Grand Lord Xian sitting on a chair. He introduces himself, and knowing that he wasn't invited to the banquet, he presents a gift to Ling, and it's the Black Iron title. Ling approaches Xian, and the Grand Lord congratulates him. He takes the Black Iron title, and remembers the promise that his uncle Zong made to him. The next day, Ling approaches Xian. The Grand Lord throws 2 magical scrolls in the air. The scrolls open up, and Xian explains that they are lists of legend-ranked individuals from the Longshan Tower and the Bloodshed Tavern. He adds that the Bloodshed Tavern is full of murderers, and Pang Yun is the strongest among them. The Grand Lord gives Ling the scrolls as a reminder that he is still weaker than everyone on the list, but states that he has the potential to also be on the list. Xian takes the Black Iron title from Ling, and says that with it, Ling can gain merit points which he can use to free his parents. He returns it to Ling, and vanishes with style. Meanwhile, Kong Hai orders his daughter to stay in the castle and get closer to Ling. He asks Kongyu if she likes Ling, because marrying him is not a bad option, but Kongyu just avoids the topic. Later, we see the brothers in a meeting with their uncles. Zong explains that Ling now has the Black Iron title, and that he can use it to bring their parents home. Ling asks Zong why his parents were captured. Zong reveals that, 20 years ago, he went to the mountain range of desolation with their father Dungbo, on a mission from the Moyang family. The goal was to look for their mother, who was running away from an arranged marriage. We see Tong struggling against a group of jackals, but he is saved by their mother, Moyang Mei. They try to escape from the jackals, but they eventually reach a dead end, so she fights the beasts using ice magic. However, Mei struggles against them and they get cornered. Zong and Dungbo arrive just in time to save them. Zong tells them that their father immediately fell in love with Moyang Mei, so they didn't take her back to the Moyang family in the end. He thought the Moyang family would just forget about them, but one day, Mei's brother, Moyang Chen, arrived to arrest them both. Although they try to resist, Chen uses overpowering magic. Mei tries to block with an ice wall, but it quickly shatters. Dungbo charges at Chen with his spear, but he is no match for Chen's magic. It becomes clear that they do not stand a chance, so Mei decides to surrender, as long as Chen agrees to leave her children alone. She entrusts them to Zong, and she bids Ling farewell, as she and Dungbo are taken away. The brothers are outraged by the story, and Ling swears that he will save his parents no matter what.